School Board of Directors. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Minshaw? Here. Mr. LaFurla?
Here.
Mr. Grove?
Yes.
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. Kazire?
Yes. As you're able, would you please rise with me to observe a moment of silence? Please join with me the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Before us now, we have the approval of our evening's agenda. Is there a motion?
I'll move approval of the agenda.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor of approving our agenda, please signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And our motion to approve the agenda has passed. Now before us is the approval of our minutes for the work session and our workshop meeting of October 8th. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the minutes of the work session and workshop meetings of October 8, 2019.
Second.
Thank you. Any discussion? Hearing none, we'll move forward with the vote on our approval of the minutes for the two meetings. All in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. And the motion is carried. Now is the time for public participation. This is the time for our public to address the board on agenda items or anything that they wish to address at this time. Is there anybody who wishes to address the board at this time? Seeing no movement, we'll move on to our superintendent's report. And Dr. Murillo, would you lead us through this portion of our meeting?
Yes, thank you so much. At this time, I'd like to invite Ms. Ostrowski to the podium. We have a couple of staff that we want to recognize tonight. This is always one of the highlights of the month when we get to recognize the great work that our staff does. So Ms. Ostrowski, the floor is yours.
Yes. Thank you very much and good evening.
Good evening.
Each month we take the time, as you know, to recognize two outstanding individuals who represent all the wonderful staff members that we have serving students in our district. Tonight we have invited our September Employees of the Month to be recognized. First of all, I'd like to introduce our support staff member of the month, Tina Hargens from Lewis and Clark Elementary. Tina, would you join Dr. Murillo here at the podium? We're going to share some information about you. Tina is a paraeducator at Lewis and Clark Elementary. Her nominators shared the following. Tina is a valuable member of the Lewis and Clark family. She's caring and goes out of her way for students and staff every day. She is an inspiration, taking charge of her own personal growth, while supporting all staff on a daily basis. Over the summer months, she installed a new sensory hallway that our students are really enjoying. She's an active member of #Team Beautify, doing all sorts of wonderful things, and is the Student Tech Club supervisor. Basically, her nominator said Tina is an all-around rock star. Congratulations. And Tina is joined here tonight by her fan club of her husband, son, and parents. So welcome to you all, and come on up if you'd like to take a picture. And her principal, Mrs. Teresa Hamilton. Tina, can I have you turn your award around and then, yeah, there you go. There you go. Yep, I think we're good. Yes.
May I ask what a sensory wall is?
Well, it's a sensory hallway.
Oh,
And Mrs. Hamilton?
Very pretty, and I tried it myself.
It's an opportunity for students to regulate in a different way, so they get some movement. So there's some that you can purchase online instead of purchasing it. Last year, Tina had seen something, just a picture of one. So out of duct tape and student work, she created a sensory hallway where students had a path to follow, and she had students in the behavior support program help her to create that. So then she designed her own, rather than us spending thousands of dollars. She drew up a little map of what our sensory hallway would look like, and then we had our PTO. One of the women had a Cricut, and so she printed out the laminate. We put it under the wax. It has stayed very nice, and it really signifies, Tina not only saw a need for it, but then she had the ambition and the initiative to create it and follow through, and then this summer was able to even actually put it down on the floor. So it's been a benefit to all students.
It's really, the other part that I really enjoyed, well, I also experienced it with a couple of students, but the patterns that the students follow. And they go so far and then they change the next thing, like one foot in front of the other, or an exercise that they stop at. So it really just engages the student, brings them back to a central spot in the sensories that they use. So it's really, Roosevelt also has one, and I'm not sure Mark yet, but there's a few of our buildings that are starting to really catch on to. Did you say that? Yes, but I don't know, it relates, but I'm not sure it's something that came from our trauma-informed.
Before I introduce our licensed staff member of the month, I want to remind us that each of our honorees are receiving a trophy and a gift card. And this is all thanks to the partnership we have with our Council Bluffs Schools Foundation and the support of our staff recognition program, and we're grateful for that. All right, our licensed staff member of the month is Megan Hastert, and she is a special education teacher at Rue Elementary. Megan, would you join Dr. Murillo? Megan is a dedicated teacher willing to do whatever it takes to meet the needs of students that she serves. While there are numerous reasons to recognize Megan, they say, the heart of her work is advocating for students with disabilities and building great relationships with families. Her impact goes beyond the walls of Rue into the entire district by serving on several district committees. She is knowledgeable, competent, and an innovative teacher and is a valued member of the Rue school community. Megan has a fantastic way of understanding the needs of both staff and students as she supports them both on their pathway to success. She consistently builds confidence in and engages her students so they will achieve more. Congratulations, Megan. And Megan is supported here tonight by Rue Principal Casey Moran, as well as her boyfriend. We're glad to have him here with us. Oh, and Ms. Plummer, yes, a colleague.
Well, I really appreciate the time that we take at our meeting to recognize those staff members who go above and beyond the call of duty. It really makes my heart feel good to see that people are so connected to their students and that their students mean so much to them. Thank you very much.
And that concludes our report.
Okay.
Thank you.
We're now down to item 4, our resolutions. First item is the early notification incentive. Is there a motion?
I'll move to approve the 2019-2020 early notification incentive as presented.
Thank you.
Second.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Yes, I have it.
Mr.
I'm
Grove.
just wondering, the past few years, we really haven't enticed too many to do it?
No, I think last year we received a few, but this is just an incentive that if we have teachers or staff members that know
You're
that
gonna
they're
tell us
leaving-
before January,
Yeah.
yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's, that way we can begin to recruit and get out,
Okay.
find high-quality teachers.
This is different than the early, sometimes we offer an early retirement
Yes.
incentive.
We don't plan to do that this year.
Okay, thank you.
If there are no other questions, the motion before us is to approve the early notification incentive. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
And I have opened up online voting.
Thank you.
Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw. Yes. Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion to approve the early notification incentive has been approved. Before us now is a policy review list. Is there a motion?
Yeah, I can move we approve the policy review list for 2020 as presented in the packet.
Thank you. Is there
Second.
a motion and a second? Mr. Minshaw is our second. Do we have any discussion? Hearing none, the motion before us is to approve the policy review list for the 2020 year. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Arthur,
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw. Yes. Mr. LaFurla,
Yes.
Mr. Grove,
Yes.
Mr. Kazire.
Yes, and the motion has been approved. We're now down to our consent agenda. There are a few items that I'd like to point out. First of all, we gratefully acknowledge and accept the donation from Edwards Auto Group in the amount of $5,210 from Mr. Troy Radigan, the Vice President. We have some we have a memorandum of understanding with Children's Square USA. We have contracts, special education contracts for students, as well as our personnel agenda, our purchase card transactions, and payments. And I believe Mr. Arthur reviewed the warrants with Mr. Wilson. Is there anything you'd wish to add to the consent agenda items?
No.
Okay, thank you. Is there a motion for our consent agenda?
Yeah, I'll move approval of the consent agenda.
We have a motion and a second. Any discussion?
Was the $5,200 for the Trade Works Academy?
No, when really, Ms. Ostrowski received the phone call from Edwards Auto Group, and they had collected for some other school districts, and it was a back-to-school kind of collection that we could use to support our classrooms. And so we were pretty excited. We thought once about TradeWorks, but we know there's other needs. So we quickly allowed Mark, Mr. Schultz and Ms. Smith to kind of divide up and look at what we could use it for in elementary and the secondary schools. And they quickly had some ideas with support of Mr. Fringer.
We never have trouble spending money, right?
I have a question on the MOU with Children's Square. So it's $24 per computer per year. What's been our experience? I just haven't seen one of these like this.
Yeah,
What's our experience been with costs related to this, I guess?
yeah. Mr. Fringer, can you kind of talk a little bit about how did the computers come back?
Sure, absolutely. There are a number of students who live on campus at the Academic Center and either attend courses on campus at the Academic Center there at Children's Square. We have other students who are residential who attend school at Hoover, Kern, and Abraham Lincoln. So those students all need computers, yet Children's Square wants very tight control over them. So what we do is we provide a certain number of computers to Children's Square. They're taken care of by an adult there, checked in and out every day, and they're actually taken care of probably better than any other computers we have in the district because of some of the restrictions that kids have about having them with them all the time. They pay us a set amount of money per year, which is equivalent to what the cooperative damage program would cost for those computers, and we have very few claims against it. Honestly, I think we have a positive cash flow in this arrangement typically, but if there was some event at Children's Square where, a bunch of computers were damaged somehow, we would, honor that agreement and repair them. That has
Thank you.
not been the case, though. They've been
Gotcha.
stellar, maybe better than anybody.
Very good.
With no further questions, we will move to the vote of the approval of our consent agenda. Mr. Wilson, would you please call the roll?
Mr. Arthur?
Yes.
Mr. LaFurla?
Yes.
Mr. Grove?
Yes.
Mr. Minshaw? Yes. And Mr. Kazire?
Yes, and the motion has been approved. Before we adjourn, I would like to open up just for a little while tonight what we talked about in our study session and the important information we learned from Dr. Vorthman and Dr. Murillo about using data for our assessments and being critical of how we can look at data to leverage our valuable resources. And I guess I'd like to open it up to any board member who'd like to talk about what we learned tonight about data and how it can make us a better board as we strive to be a better board in learning what it means to be an effective board for student learning.
Well, I think one of the things that I took away from it is that we have to be a little careful not to make too many assumptions after seeing one set of data, but to try and use the data to identify a question that will help us peel back a little bit more and get more information about whatever the topic is. And really, to me, that this is coming from one of our last couple of work sessions as a board working through the ISB materials. And we get a lot of reports on data of various aspects across the district, and I think one of the hardest parts for me is turning that data into useful information, or maybe as a board member, identifying what are those questions that we need to be asking, and or identifying a challenge that requires our support. To me, that's the hardest part, but those work sessions are very useful in learning more and how we can grow our skill set, as a board members in understanding the data.
I guess the one thing I'd add, I appreciate the conversation about how we're trying to dive below the numbers and try to understand how best practices and supports and resources and interventions, all these things are affecting or providing improvement in areas where we might have schools that are struggling or classrooms that are struggling. I think as a team, we even discussed it there about not using poverty as an excuse for things, but recognizing that we have students who have maybe difficult environment around them to try to become a great learner, and how do we support those students every day, and support our teachers who are the ones who have that interaction with the student. And I was appreciative of what Dr. Murillo said about really trying to provide those supports and not be, in any way critical or, I don't want to say critical, but punitive or something, when this is something that we, no two classrooms are alike, no set of kids is alike, and we're trying to put all kids to some norm that's, kind of arbitrary, and decided upon by all the students in Iowa, and how difficult that is. And these are things we know. We know that, all of our higher poverty, higher mobility districts has significant challenges, but still trying to improve every classroom, still trying to improve every child, which we can do now through the map link. We can see students have, if not a full plan, Dave, at least they have some guidelines and ways to know, are they making growth, even where they are. But then the discussion comes down to how do we as a board provide the resources to do that? And are there large changes we need at the top of the house, or just resources we need applied at a local level that would impact that greatly? You know, I think that's what we're trying to get as a district, is to understand, you know, what resources are needed and how do we leverage those the best. So it was a good discussion, and I think you said in there, you know, while Corey may not want to talk for another hour and a half about it, I think it's something that, as a board, we sure engage in well, and want to discuss and want to know more, you know, about how we can impact our kids.
Anything else, Mr. Grove?
Do we still have a school improvement committee made up of community citizens? Okay. Well, I'm wondering what we went through today, if we could do something like that with that group. Because I think we need to get the word out that this student assessment is not just one score. It's more complicated than that. If we had a few more people understanding what we got tonight, I think would help us. Just a suggestion.
And it's my understanding that Dr. Worthman did take that committee through some of the data as they were talking and planning and looking as they were moving forward. And if, in the Friday notes, it really talked too about the additional support that they wanted to continue to see the schools have, especially for our schools that need some additional support.
As usual, you're ahead of me, huh?
Just by a couple of days this time.
Well, if you recall last board meeting, we met with two individuals, Harry Heilgenthal and Brittany Johnson from the Iowa Association of School Boards, and they led us in our evaluation, our board evaluation. I did receive in an email within the last day or so. The days have been running together, so pardon if I don't get the day right. But we received the information, and we will be talking about that at our board officers meeting, so that we can get that information out to all of the board members, so that then we can start planning for continued steps on helping to improve ourselves as an effective board. I guess the one question that I would pose at the end, I know with me, when I see a page full of numbers, it just drives me crazy. I can't deal with it. So for me, I have to either graph it, put it in a pie chart, in a bar chart. I've got to do something with those numbers that are more than just numbers on a page. So are there ways that would be more helpful to you as board members when we receive this data from Dr. Murillo that would help you to be able to ask those questions that the data is driving us to ask? I guess that's, to me, is important, is that, yes, the data is important and we need to look at it, but is there a way that we need to provide it to you that is more effective?
Are there any taxpayer-friendly, I don't know, desktop solutions or
Well, I just put it in a
platforms that pop
spreadsheet. I
up
mean,
that-
I'll just copy that information and
just curious, like snapshots of the district or something?
then just
that can
load
be
it
done?
into my spreadsheet so that I can look at it. So I can do that. But are there other ways that would be more helpful? Think about it, and if there are, just send a note. Send a note to Dr. Murillo that we can, that would better help you to analyze the data that we receive. So keep that in mind, and if something comes up, just send a note. So with that, thanks for the great meeting. I appreciate all the work that you do and that our staff does, and with that, we are adjourned.